My name is Maya Jane, and I'm 28 years old. Last Friday was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. The day I married the love of my life, David, in what should have been a celebration surrounded by family and friends. You know, one of those days you dream about since you're little, where everyone you love watches you walk down the aisle, and tears of joy fill the room. But before I dive into this heartbreaking tale that changed everything I thought I knew about family, I'm curious to know where you're watching from today. Drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. And if stories about real families, betrayal, and finding strength when the people closest to you let you down speak to your soul, please show some love with that like button, and subscribe for daily stories that explore the depths of human relationships and resilience. Now let me tell you what happened on what was meant to be the happiest day of my life. The morning started perfectly. I woke up in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house, sunlight streaming through the lace curtains my mother had hung when I was 12. My wedding dress hung on the closet door like a ghost of all my dreams, and for a moment, everything felt exactly as it should be. My maid of honor, my college roommate Jessica, was already downstairs making coffee and humming wedding songs. The hair and makeup team would arrive in 2 hours, the flowers were being delivered to the venue, and in 6 hours, I'd be Mrs. Maya Thornton. But as I reached for my phone to check the time, the first crack in my perfect day appeared. A text from my younger sister Rachel, sent at 6:23 a.m. Maya, I'm so sorry, but I don't think I can make it today. Something came up with my boyfriend Tyler's family. I hope you understand. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before it sank in. Rachel, my only sister, my childhood partner in crime, wasn't coming to my wedding. Not because she was sick, not because of some emergency, but because of something with her boyfriend's family. I called her immediately. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up, and I could hear laughter and music in the background. Maya, hi, she said, her voice tight with what I now recognize was guilt. Rachel, what do you mean something came up? The wedding is today. You're supposed to be here in 3 hours to help me get ready. There was a pause, and the background noise seemed to get louder. Tyler's parents decided to throw an impromptu engagement party for us today. His whole family flew in from Seattle, and they've already booked this amazing venue. We literally just found out last night that they could make it work for today. My blood ran cold. You're choosing an engagement party over my wedding? It's not like that, Maya. It's just, this is a really rare opportunity. Tyler's grandmother is 89, and she might not be able to travel again. His parents really want her to be there when we announce everything officially. I sat down hard on my bed, the wedding dress swaying slightly in my peripheral vision. Rachel, I announced my wedding date 8 months ago. You've known about this day longer than you've even been dating Tyler. I know, and I'm really sorry. But Maya, you'll have other big moments. This might be the only time Tyler's whole family can be together. Other big moments? I felt something twist in my stomach, a feeling I couldn't quite name yet. This is my wedding day, Rachel. My one wedding day. You're being dramatic, she said, and I could hear Tyler's voice in the background saying something that made her laugh. You'll understand when you've been in a relationship as long as Tyler and I have. Rachel and Tyler had been dating for 11 months. David and I had been together for 4 years. I hung up without saying goodbye, my hands trembling as I set the phone down. Jessica appeared in the doorway at that exact moment, coffee mug in hand, and took one look at my face. What happened? Rachel's not coming, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She's going to Tyler's engagement party instead. Jessica's coffee mug hit the floor. But that was just the beginning. Over the next hour, as I tried to focus on getting ready, the calls and texts started coming. My cousin Marcus. Sorry, Maya, but we're at Rachel's party and it's incredible. Rain check on the wedding? My Aunt Linda. Sweetheart, we're torn between 2 events today, but Tyler's family rented out the entire rooftop at the Grand Hotel, and we've already committed. One by one, the people I'd counted on, the ones whose names were written in careful calligraphy on my seating chart, were choosing my sister's last-minute party over my wedding. By noon, I'd received 17 messages from family members who wouldn't be coming. 17 people who had RSVP'd yes months ago, who I'd paid for meals for, who I'd spent sleepless nights arranging seating for so everyone would be comfortable and happy. The final blow came from someone I never expected. My best friend since high school, Emma, who was supposed to do a reading during the ceremony. Her text arrived just as the photographer was setting up for pre-wedding shots. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I'm at Rachel's party and it's really beautiful. Tyler's family is amazing, and they've put together something really special. I don't think I can leave now. I hope you understand." I didn't understand. I couldn't understand how the people who claimed to love me most could so easily choose someone else's impromptu celebration over the day I'd been planning for over a year. But as I looked at myself in the mirror, wedding dress finally on, makeup perfect, hair swept up with the pearl pins that had been my grandmother's, I realized something that would change everything. I was about to walk down the aisle to marry the man I loved, and the people who had taught me what love was supposed to look like had just shown me that their version was conditional, fickle, and apparently very easy to abandon. The question that would haunt me for months afterward began forming in my mind as I picked up my bouquet. If they could do this to me on my wedding day, what else had they been doing to me my whole life that I'd been too loyal, too hopeful, or too naive to see? The ceremony was beautiful, even with the gaping holes where my family should have been sitting. David looked stunning in his navy suit, his eyes lighting up the moment he saw me walking down the aisle. My father walked me down. Thank God he hadn't abandoned me too, though I could see the tension in his jaw. He was furious about what the rest of the family had done, but he was trying to keep it together for my sake. Jessica had quickly rearranged the seating chart that morning, moving David's family and our friends to fill in the empty spaces. But no amount of strategic placement could hide the fact that an entire section of chairs sat vacant, like missing teeth in what should have been a perfect smile. Our friends were amazing. David's college buddies cheered when we kissed. Our work colleagues filled the air with laughter, and our neighbors from the apartment complex we'd lived in for 2 years cried happy tears during our vows. For moments at a time, I could almost forget about the people who weren't there. But then I'd catch sight of those empty chairs, and the hurt would crash over me again like a wave. The reception started beautifully. Our first dance was to "At Last" by Etta James, and as David spun me around the dance floor, I felt genuinely happy for the first time all day. The DJ was fantastic, the food was delicious, and the people who had chosen to be there were celebrating us with pure joy. It was during the cake cutting, right as the photographer was snapping pictures of David and me feeding each other frosting, that my phone started buzzing on the head table. At first, I ignored it. This was my moment, our moment, and nothing was going to ruin it. But the buzzing didn't stop. Buzz, buzz, buzz. David noticed too and gave me a questioning look. "Just ignore it," I whispered, but my stomach was already twisting with dread. Then Jessica appeared at my elbow, her face pale. "Maya, your phone's been going off nonstop. Maybe you should check it." With trembling hands, I picked up my phone. 43 missed calls. 43. All from various family members. Mostly my mother. The voicemails and texts were piling up so fast that my phone kept buzzing with new notifications, even as I stared at the screen. David's hand found my shoulder. "What's wrong?" I couldn't speak. I just showed him the screen, watching his expression shift from confusion to anger. "On our wedding day?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "They're calling you on our wedding day after not showing up?" Before I could respond, a text from my cousin Sarah popped up on the screen. "Maya, you need to call Mom right now. There's been a situation at Rachel's party, and they need your help." They needed my help. The same people who couldn't be bothered to attend my wedding now needed me to drop everything and help them. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. It wasn't just hurt anymore, it was clarity. Crystal clear, ice-cold clarity about exactly where I stood in my family's priorities. "I need some air," I told David, and walked outside to the venue's garden terrace. The music and laughter from our reception felt muffled and distant as I finally returned my mother's call. She picked up on the first ring. "Maya, thank goodness, I've been trying to reach you for hours." "I was getting married, Mom. You know, the wedding you decided not to attend." "Don't be dramatic. Listen, we have a crisis here." The caterer at Rachel's party completely messed up the order, and we're short about 60 dinners. I need you to call in a favor with that restaurant downtown. What's it called, Romano's? You know the owner, right? We need you to see if they can prepare something elegant and deliver it to the Grand Hotel within the next hour. I stood there in my wedding dress, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my mother ask me to solve my sister's catering emergency. The same sister who had ditched my wedding. The same mother who had chosen to attend that engagement party instead of walking her eldest daughter down the aisle. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice barely controlled. Maya, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Family helps family. This is important. Tyler's grandparents flew in from Europe for this, and his father is a very prominent businessman. We can't let them think we're the kind of family that can't handle a simple event. But you are the kind of family that skips weddings? I said quietly. There was a pause. That's not fair. We explained our situation. Tyler's family situation was very delicate and my wedding wasn't? Maya, please. We need Romano's phone number, and we need you to call them. They know you. They'll do this for you. I thought about Romano's, the little Italian place where David and I had our first date, where the owner, Mrs. Romano, had fussed over us like a grandmother and always asked about our relationship. She had been so excited when I told her about the engagement, had even offered to cater our rehearsal dinner at cost. The same woman who would probably move heaven and earth to help me on my wedding day was being asked to save my sister's party instead. No, I said. What? I said, no, Mom. I'm not calling Romano's. I'm not solving Rachel's catering crisis. I'm at my own wedding reception, the one you chose not to attend. Maya, you're being selfish. This is a family emergency. Where was the family when I was having my emergency this morning? When I was calling you all, begging you to reconsider? When I was trying to understand how 17 people could just abandon me on the most important day of my life? We didn't abandon you. We made a difficult choice between two important events. No, Mom, you made an easy choice. You chose Rachel like you always do. And now you want me to choose her too, even on my own wedding day. I could hear the noise from Rachel's party in the background. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. It sounded like they were having a wonderful time, without the food crisis my mother was describing. Maya, if you don't help us, this reflects on our entire family. Tyler's parents will think. I don't care what Tyler's parents think. I interrupted, surprised by the strength in my own voice. I care that my own mother is calling me on my wedding day to ask for favors for the daughter she chose over me. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness anymore. From anger. From years of suppressed frustration finally finding its voice. David appeared beside me, having obviously come looking for me. He didn't say anything, just put his arm around me and let me lean into him. They want me to fix their catering problem, I said into his shoulder. Of course they do, he replied, and I could hear the disgust in his voice. We stood there for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of our reception continuing inside. Our friends were laughing, dancing, celebrating our love. The people who had chosen to be there were having a beautiful time. What do you want to do? David asked gently. I thought about it. I thought about the empty chairs inside, about the 43 missed calls, about my mother's voice asking me to save Rachel's party. I thought about 17 people who had promised to be there and weren't. But I also thought about Jessica rearranging the seating chart without complaint, about David's grandmother crying happy tears during our vows, about Mrs. Romano asking when we were going to give her grandchildren to spoil. I want to go back to our wedding, I said. I want to dance with my husband and celebrate with the people who actually love us. As we walked back inside, I turned off my phone and slipped it into Jessica's purse. Whatever crisis was happening at Rachel's party, whatever emergency my family thought they needed me to solve, it would have to wait. For once in my life, I was going to put myself first. The DJ was playing Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, and David pulled me onto the dance floor. As we danced, surrounded by friends who had driven hours to be there, who had taken time off work, who had bought gifts and gotten dressed up and celebrated us, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't running to solve someone else's problem. I wasn't dropping everything to make my family's life easier. I wasn't being the reliable one, the helpful one, the one who always puts everyone else first. I was just being a bride, dancing with her new husband, surrounded by people who had proven their love by showing up. And it felt incredible. The morning after my wedding should have been filled with lazy kisses, room service breakfast, and David and me recounting our favorite moments from the night before. Instead, I woke up to 127 missed calls and a phone that had been buzzing on the nightstand since dawn, despite being turned off during the reception. David was still sleeping peacefully beside me, his dark hair messy against the hotel pillow. I envied him that peace. My stomach was already churning with anxiety as I scrolled through the notifications that had piled up overnight. 17 voicemails from my mother, 8 from my father, 12 from Rachel, even more from various aunts, uncles, and cousins. But the one that made my blood run cold was from my cousin Sarah, the only family member who occasionally told me the truth when everyone else was spinning stories. Her text, sent at 2:47 a.m., was short but loaded. "Maya, you need to know what really happened at Rachel's party last night. Call me when you're alone. Don't tell anyone I'm telling you this." I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbed a robe, and went out onto the hotel balcony. The city was just waking up below, morning light streaming across the buildings. I called Sarah back, my heart pounding. "Maya." She answered immediately, her voice hushed. "Are you okay? I heard about all the calls last night." "I'm fine," I lied. "What happened at Rachel's party?" "Mom said there was a catering emergency." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Maya, there was no catering emergency." "What do you mean?" "I mean the food was perfect. There was no shortage, no missing dinners. Tyler's parents hired the same company that does events at the country club. Everything was flawless." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Then why was Mom calling me about Romano's?" "Because..." Sarah hesitated. "Because Rachel wanted you to solve something else entirely, and they thought if they made it sound like an emergency, you'd help without asking questions." "What did she want me to solve?" "The photographer they hired for the engagement party flaked at the last minute, left them completely hanging. Rachel was hysterical because Tyler's grandparents were there, and his father had apparently been bragging to his business partners about how elegant and well-organized our family events always are." I gripped the balcony railing. "So she wanted me to call Romano's too?" "Not Romano's. She wanted you to call Marcus Chen." Marcus Chen was a high-end wedding photographer I'd worked with during my brief stint as an event coordinator 3 years ago. He was expensive, exclusive, and booked months in advance. But he owed me a favor. I'd referred several wealthy clients to him, and he'd always said to call if I ever needed anything. "She wanted me to get Marcus to drop everything and come photograph her engagement party," I said slowly. "On your wedding night," Sarah confirmed. "While you were celebrating your own marriage, she wanted you to convince Marcus to leave whatever he was doing and come save her party so she'd look good in front of Tyler's family." I sat down hard on the balcony chair, feeling dizzy. And the catering story? Complete lie. They figured if they said it was about food, you'd just make a quick call and not ask too many questions. But if they told you the truth, that Rachel wanted you to call in a major favor for a photographer, you might have said no. They were right, I would have said no. Even the old me, the people-pleasing me, would have drawn the line at asking a professional photographer to abandon his Saturday night plans to save my sister's party while I was at my own wedding reception. "Sarah, how do you know all this?" "Because I was standing right there when Rachel and Mom were planning what to tell you." Rachel was crying because Tyler's dad had been showing her off to his business partners all night, talking about what a class act she was, and how impressed he was with our family's attention to detail. When the photographer didn't show up, she panicked. And instead of just explaining the situation to Tyler's family, she decided to ruin my wedding night instead. "Maya, it gets worse." My stomach dropped. "How could it possibly get worse?" "They've been telling people at the party that you're difficult lately. That you've been jealous of Rachel's relationship and trying to upstage her engagement." Mom told Tyler's parents, that you deliberately scheduled your wedding to conflict with Rachel's party because you couldn't stand not being the center of attention. The world tilted. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. She said, "What? And Emma? Your friend Emma? She's been going around saying that you've been acting weird about Rachel's engagement, that you've been making passive-aggressive comments about Tyler, and generally being unsupportive." Emma. My best friend since high school, who had abandoned my wedding to go to Rachel's party, was now telling lies about me to people I barely knew. "There's more," Sarah continued, her voice getting smaller. "Dad has been telling people that you and the family aren't very close anymore anyway, so it's not a big deal that everyone came to Rachel's party instead. He's making it sound like it was a mutual decision, like you didn't really want them at your wedding." I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't form words. 24 hours ago, I had been a daughter, a sister, a niece, a friend. I had been part of a family, flawed as it was. Now I was learning that while I was cutting my wedding cake, these same people were rewriting history, making me the villain in a story I didn't even know they were telling. "Maya? Are you still there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't have told you, but I couldn't stand listening to it anymore. Especially when I saw all those missed calls on your phone notifications when you posted that wedding picture on Instagram. I knew they were harassing you." I had posted exactly one photo from the wedding, David and me during our first dance, both of us laughing at something he had whispered in my ear. I'd wanted to share just one moment of pure happiness. "They're calling you now because the photographer thing became a bigger deal than they expected," Sarah continued. Tyler's parents kept asking about the family photographer they'd been told was coming, and when no one showed up, it became this whole thing. Rachel had a complete meltdown, and now they're desperate to fix it. Let me guess. They want me to call Marcus today and see if he can do some kind of makeup shoot. "How did you know?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because that's what they always do, Sarah. They create a crisis, make it my problem to solve, and then when I point out how unfair it is, they make me the bad guy." For the first time in years, I was seeing the pattern clearly. How many times had I dropped everything to fix Rachel's problems? How many times had I made phone calls, pulled strings, spent my own money, or rearranged my schedule because Rachel had failed to plan properly, and my parents expected me to bail her out? And every time I did it, every time I came through for them, it just reset the expectation that I would always be available, always willing, always ready to put my own life on hold for theirs. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. I looked back through the balcony doors at David, still sleeping peacefully in our honeymoon suite. "My husband. My new family. The person who had chosen me first, who had stood at an altar and promised to put me before everyone else in his life. I'm going to turn off my phone," I said. "And I'm going to have breakfast with my husband, and then we're going to drive to the mountains for our honeymoon, just like we planned. And when they keep calling, then they'll figure out how to solve their own problems, just like adults are supposed to do." When I hung up with Sarah, I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt something I hadn't expected. Free. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's expectations, their crises, their constant need for me to be the reliable one who fixed everything. I went back inside, climbed back into bed next to David, and turned off my phone completely. When he woke up an hour later and saw me smiling at him, he grinned back. "Good morning, Mrs. Thornton," he said, pulling me close. "Good morning, Mr. Thornton," I replied. And for the first time in 24 hours, I meant it when I said it was good. Our honeymoon in the mountains was supposed to last 5 days. We'd booked a cozy cabin overlooking Lake Serenity, complete with a hot tub, fireplace, and no cell service. The perfect place to start our married life without distractions. But even in that peaceful setting, surrounded by pine trees and mountain air, I couldn't shake what Sarah had told me. David noticed my distraction on our second day there. We were sitting on the deck, drinking coffee, and watching the sunrise paint the lake golden, when he set down his mug and looked at me seriously. "You want to talk about what Sarah told you yesterday?" I hadn't realized how obvious my preoccupation was. I keep thinking about all the lies they told about me. How long have they been doing this, David? How many times have they painted me as the problem when I wasn't even in the room to defend myself? David reached for my hand. Probably longer than you want to know. But Maya, you're seeing it clearly now. That's what matters. He was right, but the clarity hurt. I started remembering things differently. Family gatherings where conversations would stop when I walked into a room. Times when relatives seemed surprised by my presence, as if they'd been told I wouldn't come. Rachel's friends, who always seemed to know personal details about my life that I'd never shared. I think I need to know the whole truth, I said. About everything, not just the wedding. That afternoon, we drove down to the small mountain town at the base of the lake where we could get cell service. I called Sarah from a quiet coffee shop while David browsed the local bookstore next door. I need you to tell me everything, I said when Sarah answered. Not just about the wedding, everything they've said about me, everything they've done. I can handle it now. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Maya, are you sure? Some of this goes way back. I'm sure. Okay. She took a deep breath. Do you remember when you got promoted to senior marketing manager 2 years ago? Of course. It was a huge deal for me. Mom told everyone at Thanksgiving that you'd been complaining about how the job was too stressful and you weren't sure you deserved it. She made it sound like you were having some kind of confidence crisis. I felt my chest tighten. I never said that. I was thrilled about the promotion. I know, but when Uncle Mike asked why you seemed so quiet during dinner, Mom said it was because you were overwhelmed with work and feeling insecure about your abilities. I was quiet because Rachel had spent the entire meal talking about Tyler's promotion and I couldn't get a word in. That's what I thought. But by the end of the night, half the family was convinced you were struggling and needed their support. Aunt Linda even offered to ask her friend about job openings at her company, a step down from your actual job. My mind was reeling. What else? When you bought your apartment, Mom told everyone you'd gotten in over your head financially. Said you'd called her crying about the mortgage payments. I called her excited because I'd gotten pre-approved for more than I expected. I was happy about having options. She spun it as you being irresponsible with money and biting off more than you could chew. Dad actually lectured me about being more careful with finances than your cousin Maya at my college graduation. I set my coffee down with shaking hands. Every major achievement, every happy moment, every success I'd shared with my family had been twisted into evidence of my supposed inadequacy. Sarah, why didn't you ever tell me this before? Because I thought you knew. I thought you knew they were doing it and just chose to ignore it. It wasn't until I saw how genuinely shocked you were about the wedding lies that I realized you had no idea. How long has this been going on? Maya, she hesitated. Since we were kids. Do you remember when you won the state essay contest in 10th grade? I remembered. It had been one of the proudest moments of my teenage life. My essay about volunteer work had won first place statewide, and I'd gotten a scholarship and recognition at a fancy awards dinner. Mom told everyone you'd been stressed out about it for weeks, crying every night because you were sure you wouldn't win. Made it sound like you were a nervous wreck who got lucky. I wasn't nervous. I was confident. I knew it was good writing. I know. I was there. You were excited, not anxious. But Mom's version made it sound like you were this fragile, insecure kid who needed constant reassurance. The pattern was becoming clear, and it was devastating. For over a decade, my own mother had been systematically undermining my accomplishments, reframing my successes as evidence of my supposed emotional instability or incompetence. Why would she do this? I whispered. I think. Sarah paused. I think it made her feel better about Rachel. Rachel has always struggled more than you, with school, with jobs, with relationships. You made things look easy. And I think Mom felt like she had to protect Rachel's feelings by making you look less capable than you actually were. So she's been sabotaging my reputation for years to make Rachel feel better about herself? That's what it looks like to me. I thought about Rachel, my little sister, who I'd helped with homework, who I'd driven to job interviews, who I'd listened to cry about every failed relationship before Tyler. I had genuinely wanted her to succeed and be happy. And all this time, my mother had been tearing me down to build her up. There's something else, Sarah said quietly. About David. My stomach dropped. What about David? When you first started dating him, Mom told everyone she was worried about you rushing into things. Said you'd always been boy crazy, and she hoped you wouldn't scare this one off by being too clingy. I laughed bitterly. I dated 3 people total before David, and I waited 6 months before I even introduced him to the family. She also said she hoped David was patient enough to deal with your emotional needs long term. My emotional needs? She made it sound like you were high maintenance and dramatic, like David was some kind of saint for putting up with you. I felt sick. My own mother had been planting seeds of doubt about my character and my relationship with the man I loved. She'd been setting the stage for people to see David as my savior rather than my equal partner. Sarah, I need to go. Maya, wait. There's one more thing you need to know. I don't think I can handle anything else right now. This one might actually make you feel better. What is it? Emma's been calling me since the wedding, trying to get information about how you're doing. I think she's starting to realize she made a huge mistake. Emma, the friend who had abandoned my wedding and then apparently spread lies about me at Rachel's party. What kind of information? She keeps asking if you're really okay, if you and David are happy, if you're planning to talk to the family anytime soon. Yesterday, she asked me if I thought you'd ever forgive her. What did you tell her? I told her that would depend on whether she was ready to tell you the truth about what really happened at Rachel's party and why she chose to go there instead of staying at your wedding. I was quiet for a long moment, processing everything Sarah had told me. My entire family history was being rewritten in my mind. Every interaction, every holiday, every phone call looked different now that I knew what had been happening behind my back. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you telling me all this? Why are you risking your relationship with the rest of the family to be honest with me? She was quiet for a moment. Because I've watched them do this to you for years, and I've felt sick about staying silent. When I saw how happy you looked in your wedding photos, how genuinely joyful you and David seemed together, I realized I didn't want to be complicit anymore. Complicit in what? In making you believe you're the problem when you've never been the problem. You've been the solution, Maya. You've been the one holding this family together, and they've been repaying you by tearing you down. It's not right, and I'm done pretending it is. When I hung up with Sarah, I sat in that coffee shop for 20 minutes, staring at my hands. David found me there and immediately sat down across from me. How bad was it? He asked gently. Worse than I thought, but also clearer than it's ever been. He reached across the table and took my hands. What do you want to do? I looked at my husband, this good, honest man who had never once made me question my worth or my sanity, who celebrated my successes without feeling threatened, who supported my dreams without trying to dim them. I want to finish our honeymoon, I said, and then I want to go home and build a life with people who actually love me. And your family? They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. We returned from our honeymoon to 200+ missed calls and a voicemail box that was completely full. I deleted them all without listening to a single one. David watched me do it from our kitchen counter, sipping his coffee and nodding approvingly. How does it feel? He asked. Terrifying and liberating at the same time, I admitted, like jumping off a cliff when you're not sure if your parachute will open. Your parachute is going to be fine, he said, kissing my forehead. We're going to build something better than what you left behind. He was right. Over the next 6 months, without the constant drain of family drama and the emotional labor of managing everyone else's feelings, David and I thrived in ways I hadn't expected. The first change was my career. I had always been good at my job, but I'd also always been distracted, fielding calls from my mother about Rachel's latest crisis, leaving work early to help solve some family emergency, or using my lunch breaks to research solutions to problems that weren't even mine. Without those distractions, my focus sharpened dramatically. I started arriving at work earlier and staying later, not because I had to, but because I genuinely enjoyed the projects I was working on. Within 3 months, I'd landed the biggest client in our company's history, a tech startup that needed a complete rebrand and marketing strategy. My boss, Jennifer, called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon in November. Maya, I don't know what's changed with you lately, but whatever it is, keep doing it. The Morrison account you brought in is going to increase our annual revenue by 30%. Thank you, I said, feeling a flush of pride that wasn't dampened by anyone's voice in my head, telling me I was being too ambitious or getting too big for my britches. I'm promoting you to creative director. It comes with a corner office, a $20,000 raise, and your own team. When I called David with the news, he screamed so loudly that people in the restaurant where he was having lunch probably thought he'd won the lottery. We're celebrating tonight, he declared. Fancy dinner, expensive wine, the works. It struck me then that this was the first major professional achievement I'd had, where I wasn't immediately thinking about how to downplay it to make my family more comfortable. I wasn't worried about my mother spinning it as me being stressed or overwhelmed. I wasn't concerned about Rachel feeling bad because her own career wasn't progressing as quickly. I was just purely, simply happy about my own success. That weekend, David and I started house hunting. Our apartment was fine for newlyweds, but with my new salary and David's recent promotion to senior engineer, we could afford something bigger. Something that was entirely ours, with no history, no family memories, no ghosts of who we used to be. We found it 3 weeks later, a craftsman-style house with original hardwood floors, a renovated kitchen, and a backyard perfect for hosting dinner parties. It was in a neighborhood full of young professionals and families, the kind of place where people borrowed cups of sugar from each other and organized block parties. This feels like home, David said as we walked through it for the second time. It does, I agreed, and I realized I meant it in a way I'd never meant it before. This wasn't just a house we liked. It was the foundation for the life we were building together, separate from anything that had come before. We moved in January, and I threw myself into making it beautiful. I'd always loved interior design, but had never had the space or resources to really explore it. Now, with our combined incomes, and no family emergencies constantly draining our savings, I could finally create something that reflected who we were as a couple. I painted the living room a warm sage green, hung art from local artists, and filled the space with plants and books and photographs from our honeymoon. David built built-in shelves for my book collection and installed pendant lights over the kitchen island where we ate breakfast together every morning. But the real transformation was social. Without the constant emotional vampire of family drama, I had energy for friendships in a way I hadn't since college. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with, made new ones through work in our neighborhood, and David and I started hosting regular dinner parties. Our first one was small, just Jennifer and her husband, plus David's college roommate Mark and his girlfriend. But as I watched everyone laughing around our dining room table, sharing stories and passing dishes I'd made in our kitchen, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure contentment. "You're glowing," Jennifer told me as she helped me clear dishes. "Marriage suits you." It wasn't just marriage, though. It was the absence of toxicity. It was not spending every other day managing someone else's emotional crisis. It was being able to plan a dinner party without worrying that I'd have to cancel at the last minute because Rachel needed me to drive across town to fix some self-created disaster. The dinner parties grew bigger and more frequent. By spring, we were hosting monthly gatherings that became the highlight of our social calendar. David's coworkers loved coming over, my new team at work started planning projects around our kitchen table, and our neighbors began dropping by just to chat. "You two have created something special here," said our neighbor Carol one evening as she admired the fairy lights David had strung in our backyard. "This house has such good energy." It did have good energy, and I was finally recognizing that it came from us. From choosing to surround ourselves with people who genuinely enjoyed our company, who celebrated our successes, who showed up when they said they would. Meanwhile, the calls from my family had dwindled to almost nothing. Occasionally, I'd get a text from a distant relative asking if I was okay, and I'd respond politely but briefly. My phone number hadn't changed, but I'd changed my relationship to it. I wasn't available for every crisis anymore, and eventually, they stopped expecting me to be. The only family member I maintained regular contact with was Sarah, who had become like a sister to me in a way Rachel never had. She kept me loosely informed about the family drama. Rachel's engagement had become a wedding planning nightmare. My parents were constantly stressed about money and appearances. Emma had apparently had a falling out with Rachel over something related to the wedding. "Do you ever miss it?" Sarah asked me during one of our monthly coffee dates. "The chaos, I mean. being needed all the time? I considered the question seriously. I thought I would. For the first few weeks, I kept expecting to feel guilty or lonely. But honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years. You look lighter too. Happier. She was right. I'd lost weight without trying. Not from stress, but from finally having the energy to cook healthy meals and exercise regularly. My skin was clearer, my hair was shinier, and people kept commenting on how relaxed and confident I seemed. It turns out I like myself a lot better when I'm not constantly trying to fix other people's problems, I told her. Have you thought about what you'll do when Rachel gets married? About whether you'll go? I had thought about it. Rachel's wedding was scheduled for September, 8 months away. I hadn't received an invitation yet, but Sarah had mentioned that the guest list was in flux due to budget constraints and family drama. If I get invited, I'll decide then, I said. But Sarah, I'm not the same person who would have dropped everything to make sure Rachel's wedding was perfect. If I go, it'll be because I want to celebrate her happiness, not because I feel obligated to manage everyone's emotions. And if they ask you to help with wedding planning? Then I'll politely decline and suggest they hire a professional. The old Maya would have felt guilty even saying those words. The new Maya, the one who had learned that love shouldn't require the constant sacrifice of your own well-being, felt nothing but peace about them. As spring turned to summer, David and I started talking about bigger dreams. Maybe we'd travel to Europe for our first anniversary. Maybe we'd start trying for a baby in a year or two. Maybe I'd eventually start my own marketing consulting business. These weren't just fantasies anymore. They were actual possibilities. Because we weren't pouring all our resources, emotional and financial, into other people's crises. I'm proud of you, David said one evening as we sat on our back porch, watching the sunset and planning a weekend trip to visit his parents. I know this year hasn't been easy, but look what you've built. I looked around at our home, thought about the friends who were coming over for dinner the next night, remembered the promotion and the raise and the creative projects that were fulfilling me professionally. I corrected him. We built this together. Together, he agreed, raising his beer in a toast. To building something better. To building something better, I echoed, and as I clinked my bottle against his, I knew we already had. The call that changed everything came on a rainy Tuesday in late July, almost exactly a year after my wedding. I was in my new corner office, reviewing creative briefs for a campaign launch, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer it. Maya, this is Patricia Whitmore, your grandmother's estate attorney. My heart skipped. Grandma Rose had passed away 2 years earlier, and I thought all her estate matters had been settled long ago. My mother had handled everything, distributing her jewelry and keepsakes among the family members, according to what she claimed were Grandma's wishes. Ms. Whitmore, I thought everything from Grandma's estate was already taken care of. Well, that's why I'm calling. I've been going through some old files, and I discovered something that should have been addressed much sooner. Your grandmother left specific instructions about her sapphire necklace set, the one that belonged to her mother. My breath caught. I knew exactly which necklace she meant. It was a stunning vintage piece, a delicate gold chain with a teardrop sapphire pendant surrounded by tiny diamonds with matching earrings. Grandma Rose had worn it to every special occasion I could remember. It was the most valuable piece in her jewelry collection, both monetarily and sentimentally. I remember it, I said carefully. According to your grandmother's will, filed with my office in 2019, that necklace set was specifically bequeathed to you, Maya. It was to be given to you on your wedding day, with a note she wrote explaining its history in your family. The office seemed to spin around me. I'm sorry, what? The necklace set was meant for you. There's a sealed letter here in my files, written in your grandmother's handwriting, that was supposed to accompany the jewelry when it was given to you. Ms. Whitmore, I never received any necklace set. My mother told me that Grandma only left me her recipe box and some photo albums. There was a long pause. Miss Thornton, I need to ask you directly. Do you know who currently has possession of your grandmother's sapphire necklace set? My mouth went dry as I remembered Rachel's engagement party, the photos Sarah had shown me. Rachel wearing an exquisite vintage necklace that I'd admired but hadn't looked at too closely because I'd been so hurt about the wedding situation. I think, I said slowly, my sister might have it. I see. Well, I have the documentation here that clearly states it belongs to you. Would you be able to come to my office this week to review the paperwork and collect the letter your grandmother left? I made an appointment for Friday afternoon and spent the rest of the week in a daze. David noticed my distraction immediately when I got home that evening. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, wrapping his arms around me in our kitchen. I told him about the call, about the necklace, about what this might mean. He listened with growing anger, his jaw tightening as I explained what I suspected. So not only did they skip our wedding and lie about you to Tyler's family, he said, but they also stole your inheritance? I don't know for sure yet. Maybe there was just some confusion about Grandma's wishes. David gave me a look that said he knew better. And deep down, so did I. Friday afternoon, I sat in Patricia Whitmore's office, staring at legal documents that made everything crystal clear. The will was explicit. The sapphire necklace set was to go to Maya Jane Thompson, my maiden name, upon her marriage, along with a sealed letter from her grandmother. Ms. Whitmore handed me the letter with trembling hands. The envelope was yellowed with age and sealed with wax. My grandmother's careful cursive spelled out "For Maya" on her wedding day, across the front. Take your time, Ms. Whitmore said gently. I'll step out while you read it. With shaking fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. My grandmother's familiar handwriting filled 2 pages. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, it means you've found your person, the one worthy of sharing your life. I cannot tell you how happy this makes me, even from wherever I am now. This necklace belonged to my grandmother, your great-great-grandmother Catherine, who wore it when she married my grandfather in 1892. She passed it to my mother, who wore it at her wedding in 1918. My mother gave it to me for my wedding to your grandfather in 1943. I have watched you grow into the most caring, responsible, and genuine young woman. You have always put family first, sometimes to your own detriment. You give so much of yourself to others, my dear girl, and while that speaks to your beautiful heart, I want you to remember that you deserve to be celebrated and cherished too. I chose you to carry on this tradition not just because you're the eldest granddaughter, but because you understand the true meaning of commitment. You don't give your heart lightly, and when you do, it's with everything you have. Wear this necklace on your wedding day and think of all the strong women who came before you. We are with you in spirit, celebrating the love you found and the beautiful life you're beginning. The sapphires match your eyes, my darling. I hope when you wear them, you feel as beautiful and loved as you are. All my love always, Grandma Rose. P.S. I've also left instructions for you to receive my mother's pearl bracelet and the gold locket with your grandfather's picture. These are yours by right, not by favor. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. This wasn't just about jewelry. It was about being chosen, being valued, being seen as worthy of carrying on family traditions. Ms. Whitmore returned with a box of tissues and a gentle expression. I take it your sister was wearing the necklace at her engagement party? She asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. Maya, I have to tell you something else. Your mother came to my office about 6 months after your grandmother passed away. She asked about the necklace specifically, said she needed to verify the inheritance details for insurance purposes. I told her then that it was designated for you. She knew, I whispered. She knew. And according to my records, she signed a document acknowledging that she was taking temporary possession of the jewelry until your wedding day. She was supposed to present it to you along with this letter. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I felt physically sick. My mother hadn't just failed to give me my inheritance. She had actively lied about it, then given it to Rachel to wear to the very party they'd all chosen over my wedding. What are my options? I asked. Legally, you have several. The necklace belongs to you, period. You could demand its immediate return, file a police report for theft, or pursue it through civil court. But first, I'd recommend trying to resolve this family matter privately if possible. I thought about that word, family. The people who were supposed to protect and support you, who should celebrate your milestones and respect your inheritance rights. Can I get copies of all this documentation? Of course, I'll also write a formal letter explaining the situation if you decide you need it." I walked out of that office with a folder full of legal documents and a broken heart that was somehow also filled with righteous anger. This wasn't just about my family choosing Rachel over me anymore. This was about theft, lies, and a level of betrayal that went deeper than anything I'd imagined. David was waiting for me at home with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of wine. He took one look at my face and opened the wine immediately. "It's worse than we thought, isn't it?" I told him everything. About the letter, about my mother signing documents acknowledging the necklace was mine, about the 3 generations of family tradition that should have been mine on our wedding day. "Maya," he said quietly, "this isn't just family drama anymore. This is theft. Your mother stole your inheritance and gave it to your sister." "I know. So what do we do about it?" I looked at the legal documents spread across our kitchen table, thought about my grandmother's letter with its message about being worthy of celebration and love, and felt something solidify in my chest. "We get it back," I said. "All of it. The necklace, the bracelet, the locket, everything that was meant to be mine. And we make sure Rachel knows exactly what she's been wearing. Are you sure you're ready for that fight?" I thought about the year we'd had, the promotion, the house, the friendships, the peace that had come from stepping away from their drama. I thought about the strong women in my family who had worn that necklace before me, and about my grandmother who had specifically chosen me to carry on the tradition. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. I didn't call my family immediately. Instead, I spent the weekend researching, planning, and documenting everything with the methodical precision I used for my biggest marketing campaigns. If I was going to confront them about stealing my inheritance, I was going to do it right. David watched me work from our home office, spreading out legal documents, printing emails, and creating a timeline of events. "You look like you're preparing for war," he observed. "I am," I replied, highlighting another section of my grandmother's will. "But this time, I'm not going in defenseless." The first call I made was to Sarah. She answered immediately, and I could hear the concern in her voice. "Maya, is everything okay? You sounded strange in your text." "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. At Rachel's engagement party, was she wearing a sapphire necklace? Vintage, with a teardrop pendant and tiny diamonds around it?" There was a pause. "Yes. It was gorgeous. She said it was a family heirloom that Grandma Rose had left for special occasions." "Why?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "Because that necklace was left to me in Grandma's will. It was supposed to be given to me on my wedding day." "What?" Sarah's voice rose. "Maya, that can't be right. Mom said Grandma left the jewelry to be shared among all the granddaughters for special events." "I have the legal documents, Sarah. I have Grandma's handwritten letter explaining why she chose me to inherit it. And I have proof that Mom knew it belonged to me." I heard Sarah sit down hard. "Oh my God. Maya, what are you gonna do?" "I'm gonna get it back. But first, I need to know something else. Is Rachel planning to wear it to her wedding?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. "She's been talking about it for months. She says it's going to be her, something old, and that having Grandma's necklace will make the whole day feel blessed by family tradition." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Rachel was planning to wear my stolen inheritance as her tribute to family tradition at a wedding I probably wouldn't even be invited to. "Sarah, Rachel's wedding is in 6 weeks, right?" "Yes, September 15th. "Maya, you're scaring me. What are you planning?" "I'm planning to give them one chance to do the right thing before I take legal action." That Monday morning, I called in a personal day and drove to my parents' house. I hadn't been there since before my engagement, and seeing it felt surreal, like visiting a place from a dream you'd almost forgotten. My mother answered the door in her gardening clothes, soil under her fingernails, and surprise written across her face. "Maya, what a nice surprise. Come in, sweetheart." The endearment felt hollow, but I followed her into the familiar living room where I'd spent so many hours of my childhood. "Mom, we need to talk about Grandma Rose's necklace." Her face went white. "What necklace?" "The sapphire set that you gave to Rachel, the one that was left to me in Grandma's will." My mother sank into her chair, and for a moment, she looked older than I'd ever seen her. Maya, I don't know what you think you know, but I know that you went to Patricia Whitmore's office 6 months after Grandma died. I know that you signed a document acknowledging that the necklace belonged to me. And I know that instead of giving it to me on my wedding day like Grandma intended, you gave it to Rachel for her engagement party. It's not that simple, she said, but her voice was shaking. Actually, it is that simple. You stole my inheritance and gave it to your favorite daughter. The same daughter you chose over me on my wedding day. We didn't choose Rachel over you. We were trying to balance 2 important events. Stop. My voice was sharper than I'd ever used with her. Just stop with the lies. I know what you told Tyler's family about me. I know about the photographer crisis that wasn't really a catering crisis. I know about years of you spinning my accomplishments into evidence of my supposed inadequacy. I know all of it, Mom. She stared at me, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out what I knew and who had told me. Sarah's been talking to you, she said finally. Sarah's been telling me the truth. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. My father appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension in our voices. Maya? What's going on here? I'm here about Grandma's necklace, Dad. The one you both gave to Rachel that was actually left to me. Dad looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned on his face. Oh, that. Yes, that. The family heirloom that's been worn by 4 generations of women on their wedding days, that Grandma specifically left to me, that you gave to Rachel instead. Maya, Dad said slowly, you have to understand, Rachel was so excited about that necklace. She'd admired it since she was a little girl, and when she got engaged, she should have been told it belonged to her sister. But you weren't even engaged yet when Rachel started planning. I was engaged, Dad. I'd been engaged for 3 months when Rachel got engaged. You just didn't pay attention because it wasn't Rachel's news. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Maya, my mother said carefully, what exactly do you want here? I want what's mine. The necklace, the pearl bracelet, and the gold locket. All of it. I want it returned to me before Rachel's wedding. You can't be serious, Mom said. Her wedding is in 6 weeks. That necklace is part of her entire look. Her something old. The photographer has already done engagement photos with it. Then she should have thought about that before she accepted stolen jewelry. It's not stolen, Dad protested. We're all family here. What's the difference who wears it? I looked at my father. This man who had raised me, who I'd thought loved me, and realized he genuinely didn't understand why this mattered. The difference, Dad, is that Grandma Rose chose me. She wrote me a letter explaining why. She wanted me to carry on the tradition, to feel connected to the strong women in our family. And instead of honoring her wishes, you gave my inheritance to Rachel and let me believe I didn't matter enough to receive anything meaningful. That's not true, Mom said weakly. Isn't it? You told me Grandma only left me recipes and photo albums. You let me plan my entire wedding without the jewelry that was specifically meant for that day. You watched me walk down the aisle, knowing that the necklace meant for me was sitting in Rachel's jewelry box. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. You have until this Friday to return my grandmother's jewelry. All of it. If it's not in my hands by Friday at 6 p.m., I'll be filing a police report for theft and taking you to civil court. Maya, you can't, my mother cried. Rachel's wedding will be ruined. All those people, Tyler's family. Should have thought about that before you decided to steal from me. I was halfway to the door when my father called after me. Maya, wait, can't we work something out? Maybe Rachel could wear it for the wedding and then give it to you afterward? I turned around slowly. Dad, she's had my inheritance for over a year. She wore it to the engagement party the same night you all skipped my wedding. She's been posting photos of herself in my grandmother's necklace on social media, while telling people I'm difficult and jealous. And now you want me to let her use it for her wedding too? She's your sister, Mom pleaded. No, I said quietly. A sister wouldn't have scheduled her engagement party on my wedding day. A sister wouldn't have accepted jewelry she knew belonged to me. A sister wouldn't have spread lies about me to her fiancé's family. Rachel stopped being my sister the moment she decided I was expendable. I left them sitting in that living room with their shock and their excuses, and drove home to David with a strange sense of peace settling over me. I had given them a chance to do the right thing. In 4 days, I would find out if they were capable of it. But deep down, I already knew the answer. And I was ready for what came next. Friday came and went. At 6:01 p.m., I called my parents' house. No answer. At 6:05, I tried my mother's cell phone. Voicemail. At 6:10, I texted my father. Time's up. David found me sitting at our kitchen table with the legal documents spread out in front of me, my phone in one hand, and Patricia Whitmore's business card in the other. They didn't return it, he said. It wasn't a question. They didn't even call. He sat down across from me and reached for my free hand. Are you ready for this? I thought about my grandmother's letter, about 4 generations of women who had worn that necklace with pride and love. I thought about the year I'd spent building a life free from their manipulation and lies. I thought about the woman I'd become when I stopped trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I've never been more ready for anything. Monday morning, I filed a police report for theft. Tuesday, Patricia Whitmore filed a civil suit for the return of stolen property, plus damages. By Wednesday, the story had reached the local newspaper. Family inheritance dispute rocks upcoming society wedding. I hadn't intended for it to become public, but Tyler's family was well known in social circles, and a wedding scandal involving stolen heirlooms was apparently too juicy for the society page to ignore. Sarah called me Wednesday evening, her voice frantic. Maya, it's chaos here. Mom's having panic attacks, Dad's locked himself in his study, and Rachel's been crying for 3 days straight. What about the jewelry? That's the thing. She finally tried to give it back yesterday, but the lawyer said it's too late now. That since you filed the police report, it has to go through official channels. Sarah, she had a week to do the right thing. I know you're right. It's just, her wedding is in 10 days, and Tyler's family is furious. His mother called off the engagement party they were supposed to host this weekend. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but then I remembered my own wedding day, the empty chairs, the missed calls during my reception, the lies they told about me while I was cutting my cake. Sarah, where was this concern when they were destroying my wedding day? You're right, I hate seeing the family fall apart. The family fell apart when they chose favorites and started lying to protect them. I'm just refusing to enable it anymore. The next few days brought a flurry of activity. The police recovered the jewelry from my parents' house, and I finally held my grandmother's necklace in my hands. It was even more beautiful than I remembered, the sapphires catching the light like captured stars, the gold warm against my fingers. David found me sitting on our bed, holding the necklace and crying. Happy tears or sad tears? He asked softly. Both, I admitted. It's beautiful, and it was meant for me, but I'm sad it took all this to get it back. Put it on, he said. Let me see how it looks. I fastened the clasp and looked in our bedroom mirror. The sapphires brought out the blue in my eyes, just like my grandmother had written. The necklace looked like it belonged on me, like it had been waiting all this time to come home. It's perfect, David said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. You're perfect. The civil suit was settled out of court. My parents agreed to pay damages and court costs, and to issue a public apology acknowledging that they had wrongfully withheld my inheritance. The apology appeared in the same newspaper that had covered the story, right next to the announcement that Rachel's wedding had been, quote, postponed indefinitely due to family circumstances. I didn't take pleasure in Rachel's canceled wedding, but I didn't feel guilty about it either. Actions have consequences, and after years of being shielded from theirs, my family was finally learning what those consequences look like. Emma called me the week after everything was settled. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Maya, she said, her voice small and uncertain. I saw the newspaper article. Did you? I need to apologize for choosing Rachel's party over your wedding, for the things I said about you afterward. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." "Why did you do it, Emma? We'd been friends for 10 years. She was quiet for a long moment. "Because your mom made it sound like you wouldn't really mind. Like you'd understand that Rachel's situation was more delicate because Tyler's family was involved. And because—" She paused. "Because Rachel offered to pay for my bridesmaid dress if I came to her party instead." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. "She bribed you." "I know how it sounds. I was in a tight spot financially, and the dress was expensive, and I thought you'd forgive me eventually. You always did before. I'm not that person anymore, Emma. I can see that. Maya, is there any chance we could try again, start over?" I looked out the window of my home office, where I could see David in our garden, planting the bulbs we'd bought for our first autumn together. I thought about the friends who filled our dining room every month, who celebrated our successes without jealousy, who showed up when they said they would. "I don't think so," I said gently. "I'm not angry anymore, but I don't trust you. And friendship without trust isn't really friendship at all." After I hung up, I walked outside to join David in the garden. The evening air was crisp with the promise of fall, and our neighborhood was settling into its dinnertime rhythms. "Emma?" he asked, looking up from the flower bed. "Emma. She wanted to apologize and start over." And I realized I don't want to. For the first time in my life. I'm not trying to fix a broken relationship or give someone another chance they haven't earned. David stood and pulled me into his arms, dirt from his gardening gloves transferring to my sweater. "How does that feel?" "Like freedom." 6 months later, we hosted our first anniversary party in our backyard. Jennifer from work was there, along with David's college friends, our neighbors, and a dozen other people who had become our chosen family over the past year and a half. I wore my grandmother's necklace, and when people complimented it, I told them the truth, that it was a family heirloom that had been worn by 4 generations of women on their wedding days, and that my grandmother had specifically chosen me to carry on the tradition. Sarah came to the party, bringing her new boyfriend and a bottle of expensive wine. She was the only family member I'd maintained a relationship with, and even that had taken work to rebuild. "You look radiant," she said, admiring the necklace. "Grandma Rose would be so happy to see you wearing it." "I think so too." "Any regrets?" she asked, "about how everything went down?" I looked around our backyard, filled with laughter and genuine warmth. David was at the grill, telling a story that had our neighbors in stitches. Our friends were mingling easily, sharing food and stories and creating the kind of memories I'd always dreamed of. "None," I said, and meant it completely. The last I heard, Rachel had eventually married Tyler in a small ceremony 6 months later. My parents had sold their house and moved to a smaller place in a different town, unable to face the social embarrassment of the inheritance scandal. I wished them no ill, but I also felt no obligation to rebuild what they had chosen to destroy. I had learned something invaluable through all of this. Love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself. Family shouldn't mean accepting lies and manipulation in exchange for conditional affection. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to treat you with basic respect. As the evening wound down and our guests began to leave, David and I sat on our back porch swing, my head on his shoulder, my grandmother's necklace catching the light from our porch lamp. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Thornton," he said, kissing the top of my head. "Happy anniversary," I replied. "Thank you for giving me the courage to choose myself." "You found that courage on your own. I just reminded you it was there." He was right. The strength to stand up for myself, to demand better, to walk away from toxicity, it had been inside me all along. I just needed to stop being afraid of disappointing people who had never worried about disappointing me. The necklace rested warm against my skin, connecting me to my grandmother and all the strong women who had come before her. But more importantly, it reminded me that I was worthy of being chosen, worthy of being celebrated, worthy of love that didn't come with conditions or costs. I had finally learned to choose myself, and in doing so, I had found everything I'd been looking for all along.